Now, when I mention mourning, what do you automatically think of? And no, I'm not referring to the start of each day. I mean to mourn, to grieve over something. Now, if you're like me, mourning is something that you would rather seek to avoid than embrace. And yet, according to Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, the second beatitude of Jesus, Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." What do you think Jesus meant by that? Hi everyone, I'm Mark Leeming, helping you think biblically in a brief amount of time each and every Thursday, so please do consider subscribing and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Now, Matthew's Gospel, chapters 5, 6, and 7 contain Christ's famous Sermon on the Mount that he gave on a mountain slope somewhere around the Sea of Galilee. Now, it was no accident that Jesus gave that sermon from a mountain slope, because just as the ancient Israelites received the Old Covenant, i.e. the 10 Commandments from a mountain, so now Jesus was giving them the New Commandments from a mountain. So what did Jesus mean then? Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Well, it could possibly have a double meaning, actually. Some scholars believe that Jesus was referring to those who were experiencing tragedy, a lot of pain in their lives, and how God would comfort them. But most scholars, however, would say that Christ's primary point, though, was of those who mourned over sin, those who mourned over the consequences of sin, just not in their own lives, but in their families' lives, in their community, their neighbors, their country. And that would tie in with the first beatitude that I did a video last week. I'll provide a link for that at the end of this video, where Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." In other words, those who have humbled themselves and have recognized their own spiritual and moral bankruptcy, that they acknowledge that they are sinners. And it would seem that once a person comes to that point, then they'll become sensitive. They'll become more aware of the seriousness of sin all around them. Now here's where things get rather personal. Obviously, before I ever hit the record button, I've given a lot of thought about the particular passage or verse that I'm making a video about. And Matthew 5:4 has been no different. In fact, it's caused a lot of self-reflection. How much do I grieve over sin? How much do I mourn over the brokenness of our world? And if I'm perfectly honest, not much. At least not as much as I guess I should be. And I don't think that I'm alone in that. As a modern church, we just don't seem to think along those lines. Even though in the Old Testament especially, the righteous Jews, they would mourn, they would grieve over the sin of their community, over their nation. And an outward sign that they would do was to throw dirt up in the air, have dust fall on their heads. So as a modern church, how come we don't grieve more? How come we don't mourn over sin in our midst, in our communities, in our nations? Is it because we're too afraid of being judgmental, which seems to be all the rage these days, all this concern, not wanting to be judgmental? Well, indeed, fine is a line between mourning over sin versus being judgmental over sin. But again, I think that's where the first beatitude comes into play. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Because if we start becoming judgmental over someone's sin, instead of mourning over their sin, instead of throwing dirt up in the air, well, we've really missed the point, haven't we? If all we want to do is to pick up a stone and cast it at them, instead of throwing dirt up in the air, mourning over their sin, well, we've violated Christ's first principle. The more we see ourselves as sinners, the more grace we should extend to others, the more we will grieve over sin. Well, I guess I'll leave that thought with you this week. Again, the end card should be right over there for last week's video. I encourage you to watch that. If you haven't subscribed, please do consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see all of you next Thursday. Bye for now.